Hello, good morning, and welcome to all of you. I'm Rajesh Kumar Singhal, and I'm here to present a new lecture on the mineral nutrition. So, friend, this is a second lecture on the mineral nutrition. In the first lecture, we have discussed about the basics of the mineral nutrition, where we discuss about the what is the importance of mineral nutrients. Then we have discussed about the micro and the macro nutrients. That nutrients are classified according to their required quantity into the micro and the macronutrients. Then we also discuss about the important role of this micro and macronutrients. So this is we have discussed in the last lecture. Now we will discuss about the short distance nutrient transport. So friends, you know that our soil or earth system is very rich in the nutrients, and these nutrients are present in the ionic solution into the soils. Means जो आपके mineral nutrients है, they are available into the ionic solution form. Okay, now this solution uptake by the root moves or movement into the root tissue. Then these nutrients reach to the xylem. Then xylem to they reach to the aerial portion like shoot. Then finally they reach to the target cells. Okay. So in this lecture we will discuss that how this nutrient solution reach to the xylem. Okay, from soil solution to the xylem. This is known as short distance nutrient transport. So this topic is very important for the ARS exams, okay, for the mains exams, and some question can be asked in the MCQs. Okay. So we will discuss about the short distance nutrient transport. Okay. So it is very clear that what is the short distance nutrient transport. So in this lecture we will discuss the transport of the nutrient from the soil solution to the xylem. Okay. So let's start the short distance nutrient transport. So before going to the short distance nutrient transport, we have to understand some special characteristics of the ion uptake. Okay, so these are the some typical characteristics of ion uptake. तो ion uptake के कौन-कौन से characteristics है? There are three important characteristics. One is the selectivity. Okay, second one is the accumulation, and third one is the genotypes. Okay, तो पहले पॉइंट बात है, फर्स्ट वन इज द selectivity. So what is selectivity? So friends, you know that in the soils there are number of mineral elements are present, but plant required only 17 nutrients. They are known as micro and macro nutrients. So how the plant select this nutrient, that I need only this nutrient. This is known as selectivity. Okay, so certain mineral elements are taken up preferentially, means some elements are taken while some others are discriminated और ऑलमोस्ट एक्सक्लूडेड. मीन्स हमें नहीं चाहिए ये न्यूट्रिएंट्स और हमें ये न्यूट्रिएंट्स चाहिए. ओके, सो मींस मिनरल न्यूट्रिएंट्स आर selective in nature, or uptake of iron by the plant is selective in the nature. Clear? Second point. Second point is the accumulation. Accumulation. Okay. So what is accumulation? Accumulation means the concentration of different ions are also varied in the plant cells. Means some nutrients are required in the higher concentration, while some nutrients are required in the lower concentration. Okay, so they can accumulate nutrients which are required in the higher concentration, or less accumulate which required in the less quantity. Okay, जो हमें ज्यादा चाहिए उसका ज्यादा accumulation करेंगे. जैसे आपके कुछ प्लांट्स होते हैं, that is known as hyper accumulator. Okay, so the concentration of elements can be much higher in cell shape than the external solutions. Means actively क्या कर रहे हैं, उनका uptake कर रहे हैं और accumulation कर रहे हैं. The third point is the genotypes. Okay, so friends, there are number of species in the crop plants and the plants. So they have different or distinct root system. Also their requirement for the nutrients also varies. So they are distinct difference between the plant species in their ion uptake characteristics. Okay, so these three are the important points for the characteristics of the ion uptake. Okay, now we will start the pathway of solutes from the external solution into the root cells. Okay, so their first process is the influx to the apoplasm. Okay, the second point is the, or second process is the passage of ions into the cytoplasm. Third point is the solute transport across the membranes. Fourth is the uptake of iron and water along with the root system. Fifth one is the radial transport of ions and water across the roots. And sixth one is the release of ions into the xylem. Okay, so these are the 6 important pathways by which your solutes और आयन रीच टू द चैनल. ओके, तो सबसे वो पहले रूट सेल वॉल में पहुंचेगा, देन साइटोप्लाज्म में, देन मेम्ब्रेन, देन दे विल मूव अक्रॉस द रूट सिस्टम एंड देन फाइनली दे विल रिलीज इनटू द चैनल. तो क्लियर हो गया. सो दिस इज द पाथवे ऑफ द solute transport from the external solution into the root cells or into channel. So this is the first process. Okay, this is known as influx to the apoplasm. Okay, so friends, you know that in the soils or soil solution, ions, okay, जैसे sodium ions, potassium ions, or they are chloride ions. There are so many ions. Also some organic acids like malic acids, citric acids, okay, they also present in the soil solution. Some amino acids and sugar, okay, they are moved from the external solution. Okay, it could be your soil solution or it could be some external solution. Okay, through the walls of the root cells. Okay, तो सबसे पहले आपका कौन सा ऑर्गन अटैक होगा, और ऑर्गन पे पहुंचेंगे रूट सेल वॉल्स पे, क्योंकि सेल्स का सबसे एक्सटर्नल पार्ट है रूट सेल वॉल्स. ओके, सो movement of nutrients from the solution to the root cell wall. Okay, so this is a non-metabolic process. What is the meaning of non-metabolic process? Means there is no metabolic process involved or metabolic energy involved. Okay, means there is no metabolic energy or process involved during the movement of ion from the soil to the root cell. Okay, so second, this is a passive process. Okay, and this process is driven by the mass flow or the diffusion. So this question can be asked in the objective, as a objective or the MCQs, that the movement of the ions from the soil solution to the root apoplasm is a non-metabolic, passive, and driven by the mass flow or the diffusion process. Means it depends upon the only one factor is the concentration gradient. Okay. Now second point. So this point is very clear that there are some low molecular weight ions, organic acids, amino acids or sugar which are moved from the external solution to the walls of the root cells. Second, now the ions are reached to the root cell. Okay, so you know the structure of the cell wall. We already discussed in the cell biology lectures that cell biology, this cell wall is composed of the carbohydrates, also some hemicellulose, cellulose, hemicellulose, cellulose, and the pectins. Okay, so these are the components of the cell wall, and a variable proportion of the pectins in the cell wall consists of polyglycerolic acids. Okay, तो आपकी पैक्टिन्स में क्या होता है? It is made up of polyglycerolic acids and it contains the RCOO minus group. RCOO minus group. So this group is known as carboxyl group. So this is a very important group, and this group is responsible for the cation exchange. Okay, so this is responsible for the cation exchange in the cell wall. Okay, so now in the root, cation from the external solution can accumulate in the free space or apoplasm in the cell wall. Okay, but anions is repelled. Okay, क्या हो रहा है? आपकी जो सेल वॉल है, सबसे पहले आयंस आपके सॉइल्स में प्रेजेंट है, मास फ्लो के थ्रू आपकी रूट सेल्स के पास पहुंचे। रूट सेल्स में क्या है कि वहां पर जो सेल वॉल्स हैं उसमें पैक्टिन प्रेजेंट होता है, एंड पैक्टिन में polyglycerolic acid present होता है, and it contain the carboxyl group, and this is a negatively charged group which is responsible for the cation exchange in the root, and it attract the positive ions or the cations but repel the same charge ion or anions. Okay, then there is a formation of this two space that is known as apparent free space, okay, or the domain free space. Okay, so apparent free space is comprised the water free space and free accessible to the ions, charged, uncharged molecules. Means now your root cell wall have two portion that is known as AFS and the DFS. Okay, so in this portion that is known as apparent free space, these ions or the molecules, that is low molecular weight molecules, are freely move. They can freely move. Okay, but in the DFS, okay, they are only cations. Okay, because anions are repelled here. Okay, so this is about. Next point is the ion distribution within the dominant free space are characterized by the trivalent cations. So friends, you know that different element have different charge, like aluminum have +3, sodium have +1, okay, calcium, magnesium have +2. Okay, so ion distribution within the dominant free space are characterized by the trivalent cations, means they are dominated or more powerful, because this aluminum 3 can bind more strongly than the divalent cations such as calcium, magnesium, or this calcium can bind more strongly than the monovalent cations such as potassium. Okay, so this point is very clear that this aluminum 3 +3 have more bind capacity. Okay, then cation X, this is a general point that cation exchange capacity in the dicotyledon species is greater than that of monocotyledon species. Already we have discussed that the third point of the ion uptake, this is genotype. Okay, but here you also can say that dicotyledon have more cation exchange capacity than the monocotyledons. Okay, because of their difference in the root structure and the transport pathway. Okay, next point, the fixed negative charge in the AFS. Okay, तो आपका DFS में तो कौन सा होगा? Only positive ions. Okay, in the AFS all ions are present. Okay, so this can influence both the absolute and the relative concentration of cations in the apoplasm. Okay, so friend, this apoplasm is now divided into the two parts. One is the AFS, second is the TFS. And in the AFS, all low molecular weight ion nutrients are present. What here are only positive ions dominated. Okay, so here the negative charge is also present. So it will affect the concentration of this positive charge and also the coming new charges. Okay, so it affect the absolute one concentration and the relative concentration of cations. Okay, so this point is also very clear. So this apoplasmic AFS can also serve as transient storage pool for the important nutrients. Okay, तो कभी कभी क्वेश्चन भी पूछ सकते हैं कि which one of the following work as a transient storage pools, तो आंसर जाएगा apparent free space, ना कि donant free space. Okay, so this is a pathway. Okay, so in this the ions move to the apoplasm. Okay, now second pathway is the passage of the ions into the cytoplasm. Okay, so despite some selectivity for cation binding in the cell wall, there is only one selection. This is the binding. Okay, means this Al3 have more binding capacity than the calcium, like that. So there is a difference in the binding capacity. The main site of the selectivity for the uptake of cations, anions and solutes is the plasma membrane of individual cells. So friend, this is also very well known that the plasma membrane of the plants are the selective permeable. Okay. Sometimes this type of question is also asked in the MCQs, that the plasma membrane of the plants are permeable, selective permeable, half permeable, but it is selective permeable. Okay. What is the meaning of selective permeable? Means it select only the required nutrients. Okay. Means it discriminate between the nutrients. So in the cell membrane or plasma membrane, the lipid bilayer, you know that the plasma membrane, it is made up of lipid and the proteins, and lipids are present in the form of bilayer, okay, and protein in the form of some there is a intrinsic proteins, extrinsic protein or anchored proteins. Okay. So this lipid bilayer of the plasma membrane prevent the indiscriminate movement of ions and the larger polar molecules from the apoplasm into the cytoplasm or from cytoplasm into the apoplasm. Means अब आपकी जो प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन है that is work as a selectively permeable layer. So it prevent the movement of ions molecules from the influx. Influx means apoplasm to the cytoplasm or cytoplasm to the apoplasm. Influx and efflux. Okay. So plasma membrane is the or lipid bilayer is responsible for the selective permeability. But the integral membrane proteins, that is work as a channels, facilitate the selective transport of solute across the plasma membranes. Means in the plasma membranes, it restricts the movement of undiscriminate movement of ions, but there are some integral proteins, channels, pumps are present which facilitate the selective transport of solute across the plasma membrane. Okay. Then fourth point is the most mature plant cells, the vacuole acting as a central storage compartment for ion and solutes. In the initial stage, already we have discussed that AFS is work as a transient storage of the ions and molecules. But when the cell is mature, the size of vacuole is also increased, and this work as a central storage of this ion, solutes, drugs, secondary metabolites, all the toxic compounds or ions are stored in the vacuoles. Okay. Then fifth component is the change in the lipid composition reflect the adaptation of plant to its environment. We already discussed about that heat and cold, the lipid composition or layers is change and it reflect the ion uptake or transport. Okay. So friend, this is the second pathway. Now the third very important pathway, that is known as solute transport across the membranes. Okay. So this is the transport across the plasma membrane is facilitated by the transmembrane proteins already discussed, and these can be divided into the three groups. Okay. तो ये आपके थ्री ग्रुप्स कौन कौन से हैं? This is known as primary active transport or it is also known as pump. Second, secondary active transporters, that is also known as coupled transporters, and third one is the passive transporters. Okay. Now come to the first one, that is known as primary active transport. Okay. And in this pumps are involved. Okay. So in which solute transport is coupled directly to the hydrolysis of energy substrates such as ATP or the pyrophosphate. तो जहां भी आपको पंप वर्ड मिलता है मीन्स दे आर रेस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर एक्टिव ट्रांसपोर्ट. ओके, in this ATP or the pyrophosphates are directly involved. Means we need metabolic energy to the movement of ions, and generally they work from the transport of low concentration to the high concentration. Okay, clear? Because हमें जब लो कंसंट्रेशन से हाई कंसंट्रेशन में मूवमेंट करना होगा तभी हमें एनर्जी लगेगी. बिकॉज अगर हाई कंसंट्रेशन से लो कंसंट्रेशन जाना है तो देन देयर विल बी ए मास डिफ्यूजन और पैसिव प्रोसेस. ओके, सो दिस इज अबाउट द प्राइमरी एक्टिव ट्रांसपोर्ट. नाउ सेकेंडरी एक्टिव ट्रांसपोर्ट, दिस इज नोन एज कपल्ड ट्रांसपोर्टर्स. ओके, सो इसमें क्या होगा, द इनडायरेक्ट एनर्जी means the electrical gradients which is generally created due to the H plus to the movement of solutes in either the symport or the antiport. Okay, symport means, so there are two types of secondary active transporters or coupled transporters. One is the symporter, second is the एंटी पोर्टर. तो नाम से मिल रहा है सिम्पोर्टर मीन्स इन द सेम डायरेक्शंस. ओके, और एंटी पोर्टर मीन्स इट इज इन अपोजिट डायरेक्शन. ओके, लाइक दिस. ओके, लाइक दिस. दिस इज इन सेम डायरेक्शन और दिस इज इन अपोजिट डायरेक्शन. ओके, नाउ थर्ड मैकेनिज्म इज द पैसिव ट्रांसपोर्टर्स. So as name say that this type of transporter catalyze the movement of solutes down their electrochemical gradients, and this includes the channels and carriers or uniporters, means in a only in a one direction, not in a two direction. Okay, so these three types of transporters are involved in the transport of nutrient from the membrane. Okay, so that generally the driving force for the facilitated diffusion of uncharged solutes across a membrane or its concentration gradient, whereas ions it is an electrochemical gradients. Okay, means जो आपका पैसिव डिफ्यूजन है और फैसिलिटेटेड डिफ्यूजन है फॉर अनचार्ज्ड ions, okay, they move according to their concentration gradient, means from the high concentration to the lower concentration. But for the ions it moves according only to their electrochemical gradients, means concentration of H plus or the electrochemical gradients. Okay, so the Nernst equation, this allow the direction of the net diffusive flux, means कौन सी direction in which movement the solute will be moved form of an ion at a given membrane potential and temperature to be determined. So what is the use of this Nernst equation? So this equation allows the what is the direction of net diffusive flux of a ion at a given potential and a temperature. Okay, so the when the cell membrane its potential is more negative than the Nernst potential, the cation can move into the cells. Means जब आपका negative charge ज्यादा है, when the negative force is more, then there will be a movement of cation inside the cells, or anion outside the cells by the efflux or the influx. Okay. So the resting potential of root cells is often more negative than 100 millivolt. Okay. So sometime in the MCQ it can be asked that what is the resting potential of this root cells. So it is minus 100 millivolt. Okay. That is mainly generated by the activity of plasma membrane H plus ATPase activity. Okay. So at the molecular level, this facilitated diffusion is also mediated by the uniporters, or these are the passive transporters, okay, or the channels, and nitrate, phosphate, sulfate, molybdenum, chlorine, mostly uptake by the active mechanism. Okay. So these channels, there are two types of, generally we are taking an example of like chloride channel. Okay. So this channel facilitating the efflux of chloride, which cause the depolarization, means create charge potential. Okay. Difference in the charge. So there are two types of chloride channels. One is the rapid known as R channel. Second is the S type channels, anion channels, that is known as slow type anion channels. These channels are required for the charge compensations. Okay. So means the rapid, if you want to be, means that is also known as ion homeostasis. So for homeostasis, there are two types of channels, that is rapid and the slow. Okay. If you need fast the depolarize fast, then there will be a rapid channels. The movement of transporters is very high in case of rapid type. Okay. So this is about the passive diffusion in the membrane. Second, in addition to the uniporters and channels, this solute transport across the membrane can be catalyzed by these two transporters, that is known as primary and secondary active transporters. So several ATPase are present in the plasma membrane. ATPase means ये आपका हो गया primary transporters. They catalyze the efflux of H plus calcium and the heavy metals from the cytoplasm. Okay. The H plus ATPase catalyze the H plus efflux, which is then coupled directly through the proton electrochemical gradients or indirectly via cell membrane potential to the movement of other solutes. So these are known as secondary active because they are not directly involved. ATP is not directly involved in the transport of this channel. Okay. This transporter. The plasma membrane calcium ATPase remove or efflux the calcium from the cytosol to maintain the low cytosolic concentration, which is also required for the cell signaling. And in the root steel, calcium ATPase, calcium protein ATPase catalyze the efflux of calcium and other divalent cation from the symplast to the xylem. Okay. Then secondary active transport in the plasma membrane of root cells, such as for nitrates, nRT1 and 2, phosphate, PST1, sulfate, SuLTR1, for potassium, that is cup, half, tonoplast, H plus ATPase, H plus pyrophosphatase, calcium ATPase. So these are mostly secondary active transporters. Okay. So the pump that is responsible for primary active transport not only generate the protein motive force or protein electrochemical gradients across the tonoplast or plasma membrane, but also maintain the acidic condition of the apoplasm and the vacuoles for the movement of ions. Okay. So friend, this is about third process. The next process is the uptake of iron and water along with the root system. So friend, this is you know that this is the root sections, and this is a root cap, and this is a area of cell division, and this is a area of elongation, and this is a area of maturation where the root hairs are present, and this area is mainly responsible for the uptake of ions. Okay, so root vary both anatomically and physiologically along the longitudinal axis. So this is a longitudinal axis. So in the apical zone, the non-vacuolated cells are dominated, means they are new cells. So there is a small or no vacuoles are present in the meristematic cells. These zones have higher respiration, which decrease rapidly when the carbohydrate supply to the root is impacted. Okay, so they are mainly meristematic cells, which is represented by high metabolic or respiratory activity. If there is a less carbohydrate supplied to the root, this process is inhibited. Okay, and generally there is a tendency for the root rate of ion uptake or the root length. It is decreased with the distance from the root apex. Okay, for example, uptake of magnesium and calcium is higher in the apical portions than the basal portions. Okay, this is a basal portion. Okay, also water uptake can also affect the ion uptake both directly through the effect on the rate of radial transport. Okay, will in radial transport of ion through the apoplasm, or indirectly by influencing the supply of ions to the plasma membrane. Okay, so water concentration or relative water content or water potential, it is very crucial for the ion uptake, because directly it can reduce the rate of radial transport of ions. Okay, or secondary, it can reduce the supply of ions. Okay, now next process is the radial transport of the ions and water across the roots. Okay, so friends, you know that this is a root. In the root this is epidermis, cortex, endodermis and pericycle. So sometimes there is a Casparian strips which are present in the endodermis, which block the pathway of mineral nutrition. Okay, so there are two parallel pathway of the movement of solutes. Okay, so this is very important for the mains exam, that radial transport of the ion and water across to the root. So there are two parallel pathways of movement of solutes and water. So this is a common pathway for the water and the solutes across the cortex toward the stele. Okay, from epidermis to the pericycle to the xylem. One passing through the apoplasm. Okay, another from the cell to the cells. So there are two pathways, that is known as symplastic, and second one is the apoplastic. Okay, so in this symplastic, the nutrients move via plasmodesmata. Okay, so this is a structure which move the ions in the. Okay, in most of the roots, the apoplastic movement is to the stele is restricted by the Casparian band in the wall of endodermal cells. So friends, if the plasmodesmata present, so ions can be moved from epidermis to the pericycle without restricted But when the ions move from cell, from epidermis to the pericycle without the plasmodesmata, these Casparian strip block or reduce the solute transport, because these bands are suberized and join each endodermal cells which block the transport path. Okay, so this is a one barrier. Second barrier is the exodermis, which also can be developed parallel with the endodermis. Okay, so there is a formation of exodermis which also can be block the pathway of the solutes. In addition, there is a third barrier that is known as presence of passage cells in the some plants. In the root apex where the Casparian band is not yet developed, the apoplasmic movement of water and solid to the still can occur. So if there will be in the case of this apoplastic pathway, the water and solutes move from the some other pathway or some other cells, because these cells are blocked by the Casparian bands, exodermis or some passage cells. Okay. So in this case, the apoplasmic pathway to the steel is also possible in the vessel root zone where the structural continuity of endodermis is disrupted transiently by the emergence of lateral root from the pericycle. Means this is a endodermis and this is a pericycle where the lateral roots are originated. So they cause the some transient or integrity discontinuity. Okay, or some pores where the ions can be moved from the this apoplastic pathway without facing the Casparian bands. Okay, क्लियर हो गया. अब इसमें क्या है, देर आर टू पाथवे. फर्स्ट इज द प्लाज्मोडेस्माटा, sympod, and second one the apoplastic. In sympod, that is the very simple pathway that ion move from the this epidermis to the xylem via the plasmodesmata. And second pathway is the apoplastic pathway. So in this pathway, there is a generally presence of passage cells or the Casparian strips which block the pathway. So in this case, the ion or nutrients can be moved via the some cells where the structural integrity or continuity are broken due to the emergence of lateral roots. Okay, so by which this pathway and this solutes can be moved from one cell to another cells. So this is known as bypass flow, which is become particularly important for the water supply to the shoot as high transpiration demand or in the accumulation of sodium in leaves under saline condition. So in some case, plant adopt this bypass flow. The symplast pathway play key role in delivering most nutrients to the xylem, because in the apoplastic pathway there is a blockage of the transport, and this beginning either at the rhizodermis and the root hairs, at the exodermis or the endodermis, and radio transport in the symplast require movement through the plasmodesmata which connects the two cells. Okay. So the mechanism of symplastic transport of solutes seem to be chiefly by diffusion or facilitated by the radial water flux or the cytoplasmic streaming. So the movement of solids from this symplast pathway required just they move from by the diffusion pathway or the water flux with the water flux or the cytoplasmic streaming. Okay. So after this, there is a last point of the transport of nutrients from the soil to the now xylem. Okay, means this is the last pathway So after the radial transport through the symplast or apoplastic to the steel, iron and these low molecular weights are released into the xylem. Okay. So this release also known as xylem loading. Okay. Into the fully differentiated non-living xylem vessels. Okay. Occur across the plasma membrane of xylem parenchyma cells. So these are known as vascular tissue. Okay. Xylem vessels and the xylem parenchyma cells. And the membrane potential of these cells is slightly negative, and the xylem shape has a pH between 5.2 to 6.0. Okay. The solute enter the xylem through the ion channels or the unipoters, means passive diffusion. If their electrochemical gradients allow this, or their transport is coupled to the proton electrochemical gradient generated by the plasma membrane H plus ATPase or directly to the ATP hydrolysis. So here there will be a three possibility, means if the electrochemical gradients, because there is a pH difference between the xylem and the cytoplasm, so if there will be a electrochemical gradients allow the movement of ions, then directly they can move to the passive process. Or if not, then there will be two possibilities. First one through the secondary transporters, and third one is the primary transporters. So the key role of the H plus ATPase in the plasma membrane of parenchyma cells in xylem loading is now well established, and protein are pumped into the protons, so not proteins, protons H plus pumped into the xylem both to generate a first negative membrane potential and second the acidity of the cells, which can neutralize the electrochemical gradient between these two sites. Okay. Then anion channels can facilitate the movement of nitrate, sulfate, phosphate and chloride from the symplast to the xylem in the direction of their electrochemical gradients. In addition, nitrate can be also loaded into xylem by nRT1 family. Cation present at low concentration in roots symplast are loaded into xylem by a active transport mechanism. The regulation of xylem loading separately from the solute uptake, means the xylem they are different. For solute uptake, the transporters are different in the plasma membrane, and the transporters for the xylem loading is also different for the xylem loading. Means these two pathways are separately divided. Okay. And diurnal fluctuation in the nutrient uptake by root and their delivery to the xylem do not coincide. Means there the uptake of nutrient and the xylem node loading are not coincide because they have different transport system. So friend, this is about the short distance nutrient transport. Hope you understand that how the nutrients are moved from the soil solution to the first root cell wall, then to the cytoplasm, through the cell membrane, then the radial transport of the nutrients, and finally the xylem loading. So at two places, mainly at the membrane, plasma membrane and the xylem loading, the transporters are involved. Okay, and in the radial transport of nutrients, there will be involvement of symplastic and apoplastic pathway. So this is about the short distance nutrient transport pathway. Hope you understand. Thank you very much.